No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 3. And just as Westminster was taken over by the woke mind virus being spread by Slippery Starmer and the new Labour socialist government, the reform boys arrived to shake stuff right up. Oh, you love to see it. Today, the future of the right in the UK. But hit subscribe right now because we are here every weekday. And on YouTube, I cannot believe this. And thank you so much. After just 2 episodes, we are so close to hitting 100,000 subscribers. In fact, if you subscribe right now on YouTube, we might even get there during the show today. So please hit the subscribe button and let me know when we're at 100k. Remember too to sign up to our uncancelled after show. That's where we come off big tech to truly unleash and I get to speak to you. So to do that, you just need to visit www.outspoken.live right now. Click the sign up button and you will get 30 minutes extra content completely uncensored every single day. But coming up on the show, as Farage storms Westminster, can the Tories be saved? The best analysis from returned Tory and true Conservative Mark Francois, director of PopCon UK Mark Littlewood, and the former Tory Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins, plus your outspoken views. Our question of the day, which you can vote for right now actually if you go into our YouTube community. Who can save the Conservative Party? Suella Braverman, Tom Tugendhat, Boris Johnson, or maybe it's Nigel Farage. And later, June Slater, tonight's outsider, on that shocking moment where Novak Djokovic was booed at Wimbledon. And then, of course, the after show. www.outspoken.live. You can watch the main show there too. Let's go. The boys are in Parliament. The Fantastic Five take over. Have a look at these glorious pictures, which just bring to mind so many little quotes, don't they? Nigel Farage, the most influential politician of his generation, the man who inspired Brexit, the man who the establishment thought would be permanently defeated by the first-past-the-post system, finally with a seat in Parliament. And he's brought his rabble-rousing mates along for the ride. But they're having a lot of fun on the way as well.
So on the way in this morning, I drove past my old school, and I remembered September 1974, walking into this great big historic place thinking, gosh, well, I'm a few years older now, there are 5 of us, luckily Lee knows where we're going, otherwise we would be completely and utterly lost. If anything goes wrong today, it's down to Lee Anderson.
Now compare their demeanour to that of any serving Conservative MP today, and there's a stark contrast, of course. But there is hope in the air for those who fear for our country. The revolution is coming, definitely from reform. Nigel is up for a real fight, not just with Labour and the Tories, but with the crooked and corrupt MSM too.
Maybe only 5 of us, but we're very united.
You're going to be voting with the Conservatives on measures to do with migration, do you expect?
Do you mean the party of mass migration? Do you mean the party that have increased the population by 6 million since they came to power? I don't understand the question.
And are you going to be giving Labour a tough time when you can?
We'll do everything we can to hold the elected government of the day to account. And remember, 1/3 of the vote, 2/3 of the seats, they don't really have that much authority.
Of course, you and your fellow Reform MPs actually in the building for the first time, waiting for your new offices. Describe what it's like today, meeting all the MPs, and it was your 8th attempt. You must have thought it may never happen.
Well, second serious attempt.
8th attempt, she just had to get that in there. Second serious attempt, he just had to get that in there. So where does all of this hysteria and excitement around reform leave the Conservative Party? Well, I've been having the most fascinating conversations over the past few days that I want to tell you about, because it's becoming clear to me that the world's most successful political party is facing an existential crisis. Out of touch with its membership, many of whom voted for reform out of total desperation after a series of bitter betrayals, wet and woke MPs for some reason continue to follow Rishi Sunak's failed doctrine, a move to the centre. trying to compete with the Lib Dems, giving up on the Red Wall, giving up on red meat, small c conservative policies, accepting mass immigration as a necessary evil. And if the Conservative Party continues down that path, then it is dead. Those conversations I've been having, by the way, include household name Conservatives, some of whom are speculating that the party may have to die, that Nigel Farage's Reform UK might become the vehicle for true conservatism over the next decade. Others, though, who cannot stomach Nigel are advocating for the creation of an entirely new party. So this fight for the leadership, right, it's going to be bitter. Indeed, last night, Superwoman Suella Braverman, a true Conservative, plunged the party into a civil war with a barnstorming address at the NatCon conference in Washington, D.C.
Our problem is us. Our problem is that the Liberal Conservatives who trashed the Tory party think it was everyone else's fault but their own. My party governed as Liberals and we were defeated as Liberals, but seemingly, as ever, it's Conservatives who are to blame.
But I thought what was most interesting is what she said about her fellow leadership hopeful Robert Jenrick afterwards. This is what she told the Daily Telegraph. He definitely comes from the left of the party. He voted for Remain in the Brexit referendum. He was a big kind of centrist Rishi supporter. I remember talking to him about leaving the ECHR a year ago and him looking horrified by that prospect. It's really good that he's moving in a different direction. Wasn't the story that he was sent by Rishi to keep an eye on me in the Home Office? So she's up for a fight, but MPs are doing all they can to stop Suella. I think they should think again. I mean, listen to her laying out her case at today's PopCon UK conference.
It's no good denigrating Reform voters. It's no good smearing the Reform Party. It's no good comparing Reform rallies to the rallies of Nuremberg. That's not going to work. Briticising people for voting Reform is a fundamental error to make. Historically, in British politics, we have had the monopoly on the right-wing vote. That's one of the reasons why we've been so successful politically. The left, by contrast, for the last 100 years, has been split. Left-wing voters have had a choice of party to go for, and we, by contrast, have had the luxury of a monopoly, but no longer. And that is why the Reform Party presents an existential threat.
Now, among the public and certainly Conservative members, Superwoman Suella is the big hope, sort of like the Marine Le Pen figure of British politics. And I have a real feeling that if she is rejected again by the Tories, she will be lost to Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Now, though, our uncancelled interview. And Spartan Brexiteer Mark Francois, well, he was one of the bright spots, actually, on election night for the Conservative Party. He romped home in Rayleigh and Wickford. However, it is fair to say the Reform UK candidate was in second place, but didn't provide a real threat. So where to now for the world's most successful political party? I mean, Mark, look, number one, what a result, given the circumstances. My goodness, you must have been relieved because you are one of the few Conservatives who actually are left with a relatively comfortable majority. However, as I said, Reform was bubbling up there in second place. So do you agree with what Suella Braverman said there, that your party is now facing an existential crisis because of Reform?
Well, Dan, let me give you a world. By the way, it was a grueling campaign, and I'm very grateful to my constituents for re-electing me. I'm just about to go and take the oath of allegiance, so I should put that on the record. Let me give you a world exclusive. In November 2022, so not long after Rishi had become Prime Minister, I led an ERG delegation that went to see him in the Cabinet Room at number 10 Downing Street. It included IDS, Sir Bill Cash, Sir Bernard Jenkyns, David Jones, Lawrence Robertson, all of our kind of leaders within the ERG. And we put two very specific points to Rishi Sunak across the Cabinet table. One, we warned him very clearly, politely, but very clearly, that he had to do something about the boats and immigration, because for years we as a party had talked tough on immigration, but the numbers had gone the wrong way and not the right way. And the public would not forgive us if we didn't reverse that. We were very clear about it. And secondly, and at the time, to give it context, Reform were on about 4% in the polls.
Yeah.
We said that if we didn't do something about Reform, they could be an existential threat at a future general election. And we were, the tone was polite but firm, and he didn't listen to a word we said.
Goodness. So you warned him of all of this?
We absolutely, it didn't leak. I'm not making it up. There were a lot of us there. I could, provide corroborating witnesses if you like. Craig Williams was there as PPS, who kept trying to close the discussion down because he could see Rishi wasn't comfortable with it. But that's the discussion that we had. So I told you so.
Yeah. But are you angry now, Mark? Are you angry? Because look at what that decision has done to your party, the world's most successful political party.
Dan, I won't lie to you. I'm not chuffed. I've seen many of my friends defeated, and Nigel bears some responsibility in that. I'll come on to that in a minute. It was an absolutely grueling election, and we had no warning. Most of the party, we thought we might have to fight a general election in May. We were prepared for that. Then we were stood down. Some of us had local elections. We worked very hard for those. Then we thought we could breathe out, and everybody expected it to be in the autumn. And the PM famously said, you can book your summer holidays. And then bang, we're thrown into battle with absolutely no warning whatsoever. And the party was clearly not prepared for it. And you saw the consequences. So that is what happened. On Nigel, let me just give you my personal...
Because you're friends with Nigel, right? You're personally close.
Yeah, I've known him for years. He invited me to his 60th. But, he's still responsible for the loss of a lot of good Tory MPs, at least partly. But let me speak frankly. We never handled Nigel, if handle is the right word. We never treated Nigel correctly after 2019. Because in 2019, he calculated correctly that after 3 years of trench warfare in Parliament, and that's what it was, we would only be able to leave the European Union if Boris won and won well. He was right. So he stood down his candidates in Tory incumbent seats. And as I understand it, within what was then the Brexit Party, this led to screaming matches. Some people had paid 10 grand towards their election expenses. All of their literature had to go in the skip. And then after but he put country before party. And Boris won well. And then afterwards, there was all this discussion about, should we have given him a knighthood, or should we have given him a peerage, or made him a companion of honour? We didn't even give him lunch.
No.
And
huge
Boris,
strategic error.
Boris, being Boris, pocketed it. I think there were people in the background who advised him to do that. So human nature being what it is, I can well understand why Nigel was very angry.
Do you mean Dominic Cummings in the background? Because let's just be honest about this, Mark. Cummings hated Farage. And so a lot of that personal animosity led to the way that the Tory party treated Farage.
Well, I think Dominic hates a lot of people.
That's for sure.
It's a long list, isn't it?
I think you're probably on it.
But probably am. But anyway, so for whatever reason, the Tory party didn't say thank you.
Yeah. And
so you can understand why this time round, when some of my colleagues were saying, oh, well, do you know, if I know Nigel, do you think we could get them to stand? And I said, no, guys, because the way they see it, and by the way, Dan, for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not defecting to Reform. I'm a Tory.
Did they ask you?
No, Nigel never has. No. No.
Richard
I've had
Tice
one
or anyone else?
No, I had some people on my Facebook page saying I should defect to Reform during the election. I mean, ironically, a lot of these were bots that came from Nigeria. There's an irony in there somewhere.
But you would not even consider it, Mark, no matter what happens over the next 5 years. What if you get Tom Tugendhat leading you? Are you seriously going to stay a Conservative MP?
Dan, I don't think on the election, but let me just finish my point,
if I may,
because I hope you don't think this is arrogant, but I think it's an important point.
Please.
This time round, there was going to be, if you like, no mercy. Because even though I wouldn't join Reform, I know some of their people. And their view was, there's no point doing a deal with you, because look at what you did last time. So we're just out to get you now. You know, we tried to do, quotes, the decent thing as they see it, and we got nothing back. You just pocketed it, so now we're coming for you. I mean, I paraphrase, but you understand my argument.
Yeah.
And that's why nobody got a buy. You know, irrespective of their Euroscepticism or their track record on Brexit or any of that, or even personal friendships, you know, we all, with one or two exceptions where people dropped out or you know, there were nomination cock-ups at the last minute, but essentially just about everybody had a Reform opponent. And some of those were just pure paper candidates. But they still got a lot of votes because of Nigel's air war, if you see what I mean. So where does that leave us? Well, Nigel is now in the House of Commons. He always had a way of making his point in the European Parliament. I'm sure he'll attempt to do the same. Although I think what I would say is I think he'll find the House of Commons is a bit different from the European Parliament. It's not the same on a whole range of levels. But
did you see today that he's already attacked John Bercow in his first speech in Parliament? Now, I thought it was funny and I thought he made a great point, but do you think that was inappropriate?
I think he got the tone wrong. The tone was about congratulating Lindsay. If I'm
Lindsay
honest.
Hoyle, who is having another turn as speaker.
But that Nigel always says something controversial so that people like you can report him. He does it every time. He's a past master at it. So he knew what he was doing. Anyway,
and he's there to challenge the establishment, isn't he?
Well, I know, Dan, but you asked me my opinion. I've given you an honest answer.
Fair enough.
With regards to the future and the leadership, and then I'm sure, you know, Mark's been very patient, Mark Littlewood. But with regard to the future and the leadership, I don't have a preferred candidate. I don't think we should rush. We've just suffered a very heavy defeat. I think we need to be humble and reflect on what went wrong, and then pick a new leader in the autumn, perhaps after the party conference. If you remember, in 2005, we used the conference a bit like a hustings, and that's when Cameron emerged. And I think maybe we should do something like that again. I don't think we should, given the scale of the defeat, I don't think it makes sense to rush our fences.
Mark, it might surprise some people, though, given that you are a Spartan Brexiteer and that you have served on the ERG alongside Suella Braverman, that you're not automatically backing her.
No, I'm not automatically backing anybody. And I come back to my earlier point, Dan. You know, Spartan, all the rest of it. You know, Nigel Farage once said at a public event, "Thank God for the Spartans." Still stood a candidate against me, though.
Yeah.
So you know, don't expect Tory MPs who've just been through an incredibly grueling 6-week campaign to shower Nigel Farage in love. I don't think that's going to happen, Dan. And with regards to the leadership, my personal view is I think we should wait till the autumn. You know, Suella will no doubt be a candidate, as will, you know, we all know who the most likely names are. It could be, as in 2005, someone emerges from out of the ranks. Cameron kind of came from nowhere and, you know, stole it. Who knows what will happen? But I just think that given the scale of the defeat, we as a party need to have some humility here. And we need to reflect and not rush into doing something. You know, we picked Rishi. It was a coronation. Look what happened to that. I believe our members have to have the final decision. They have to pick, you know, the voluntary party slog their guts out without any strategic warning for 6 weeks. if some of my colleagues who think we can take the decision on the leadership away from them, well, then those people will quite rightfully tell us where to stick it.
Yeah,
so in return for everything they've done, a grueling 6-week battle, the least we can do is reassure our party members that they will choose who will be the next leader of the Tory party. And that means a hustings at the conference. And that means allowing members to go and actually see everybody. No more coronations. We've had 2 coronations in recent years. One gave us Theresa May, the other gave us Rishi Sunak.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more when it comes to the membership. Final question, Mark.
So we must let Mark Littlewood have a go. I know it's your show.
Absolutely. The final question to you, and I've got to ask it, the Boris question. He has tweeted today criticising the Labour government already. Very powerful, strong speech, slamming them for getting rid of the Levelling Up department. Could you see him returning? Is Boris the answer in any way to the Conservative Party's troubles?
Well, as I understand it, Boris is making millions of dollars a year out in the United States. He's getting paid a fortune, to do a 20-minute turn, for the Cincinnati Round Table or whoever they are. So the idea he's going to give that up for 91 grand a year, I find challenging. But with Boris, you never quite know. I mean, I'll just add one last thing, and this I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous after the scale of the defeat, but I'll make you one prediction. We now live in an age of politics where people are used to ordering whatever they want on their phone, and if they don't get it within 48 hours, they think they've been hard done by, right? That's the world we now live in. So I think by the time we get to mid-term, it's possible, I only say the word possible, that there could be massive buyer's remorse among Labour and among the electorate. Labour are going to be, there are a whole bunch of client and interest groups who expect Labour to perform miracles. And if and when they don't, I think you might see those polls shift quite dramatically, possibly even within the space of the first parliament. Why do I say that, Dan? Because if on the morning or the lunchtime on the 13th of December 2019, when Boris had won an 80-seat landslide and Corbyn had been reduced to 198 seats, who would have, if I dare talk about electoral betting, who would have bet that at the end of that parliament, the new parliament, Labour would win with over 400 seats and a gigantic landslide? So my point is, electorates are very volatile now.
Yep, I totally agree. Look, Mark Francois, I know you've got to go and get sworn in, but absolutely delighted to have you here for the Uncancelled.
And it's great to have you back on air, Dan, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mark. Absolute pleasure. Speak soon. Now, look, as we saw in the digest, Superwoman Suella said the Conservative Party is facing an existential crisis as a result of Reform UK. Now, she actually made those comments at a special post-election PopCon event, which is hosted by its director, Mark Littlewood. It was a really good event. Watch the whole thing today. And Mark actually addressed the issue head on. Watch this.
We need to be 100% clear about this and the impact on the result. This is not Nigel Farage's fault. It is not the fault of millions who voted for reform. If the Conservative Party vacates Conservative territory, someone else will come and fill it. Nature abhors a vacuum, politics even more so. It was our fault. So, as we consider the positioning of the Conservative Party going forward, I'm sceptical of some of the suggestions that elections are always won from the centre.
Mark Littlewood, great to have you here. I thought the conference was absolutely excellent today. You had lots of big speakers, of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Lord Frost, David Starkey, but really it was Suella who stole the show, and I'll speak about her in just a moment. But I want to pick up first on that point you made just there, because I think it's a really important one, Mark, because I am getting a bit fed up with Tories criticising me for voting for Reform UK, even though I spent the past 5 years doing everything I possibly could, supporting the Conservative Post, the Conservative Democratic Organisation. We warned, Mark, if you go down the route of defenestrating Boris, defenestrating Liz, installing Rishi Sunak, taking on a globalist agenda. We're not going to be there for you. And so I really am getting annoyed with reform voters being blamed. What other choice did we have, Mark?
Dan, it's great to be with you. And what a very fair point. As I said in my remarks earlier at the PopCon conference, the fault is entirely ours, those of us who are members of the Conservative Party. It's absolutely extraordinary that we vacated our base ground. And look, if you look through the election results, sure, Labour have won a colossal majority, but on 34% of the vote. If you actually look at national vote shares, really, Dan, what altered was Labour held about steady, ticked up by 1 or 2% post-Corbyn. Lib Dems held about steady. What really happened was the Conservatives leaked votes to reform. And I don't blame the people who said, well, it says Conservative on the party label, it says it on the tin, but when I actually open the tin and I start eating the stuff in the tin, it doesn't taste very Conservative. So in my view, the prime objective of the Tory party now, and I'm absolutely delighted that proper Conservatives like Mark Francois have got back over the line. We've lost many decent Conservative colleagues, but thank God in that parliamentary party there are people like Mark, proper Conservatives. We need to get back to our base proposition. What the Conservative Party did over the last 6 or 8 months was say that we're Coca-Cola, but actually sell you organic goat's milk. And this is an absolutely ludicrous proposition. I am not saying that had we gone down a true blue line, that we would have won this election in a landslide. I don't know if it would have deterred Nigel Farage. Perhaps it would not. But I can tell you this, we would have won a damn sight more than 121 seats. And I would also rather go down fighting for what I believe in, rather than putting forward yet another soggy social democratic proposition to our electorate, which was frankly an embarrassment. So thank God, the greatest political party in terms of electoral success anywhere on the planet, the British Conservative and Unionist Party, at least forms the official opposition. We at least came second in vote share. Not everybody predicted that. And we're a clear second in seats. This is a stay of execution there, Dan, a stay of execution. If we do not get back to being what it says on the tin, being Conservative, there won't be anything meaningful opposition in this country. We'll have the Conservatives as soggy Social Democrats across the bench. We'll have the Liberal Democrats as probably to the left of Starmer as the third biggest party. And then maybe Nigel and his cluster of 5 MPs do break through. But I'd say this, the ball starts in the Conservative Party's court. This is beyond a wake-up call. The alarm bells should be ringing. Thank God,
this is an emergency.
I say again, we've got a cluster back, but we now need to become Conservative again.
And look, there's one person fighting from day one, fighting for this job and prepared to tell the Conservatives, and especially the wets and the wokes in the party, some home truths, and that is Suella Braverman. I watched her whole address to PopCon today. It was detailed. It was uncompromising, you might say. She isn't holding back, Mark. And I feel, you obviously will know better what's going on, but I feel a bit like she's saying, if you don't make me leader, I'm off. I'm going to go and join Nigel and reform.
Dan, your reading of her psychology or her future intentions will be at least as good, if not better than mine. I don't read that into what she's actually said. Where I'll give her credit, and I don't know who the leadership candidates will be, just like Mark Francois has said to you, I don't know who I'll back. I'm pretty clear what platform I want them to run on. But where Suella has tapped into something, and some people are saying she's gone a bit too brutal, a bit too hard, and a bit too fast. But what she has tapped into is we have got this fundamentally wrong over the last 6 or 12 months, and there needs to be dramatic change. And the next leader of the Conservative Party, whoever he or she may be, has to sign up to that. If somebody wins saying, oh, well, we got attacked to the centre and the adults are back in the room, the party is doomed at that point, absolutely doomed. So it needs the sort of bravery and analysis and clarity of thought that Suella has, I think, eloquently put forward. Whether she emerges as the leader or not is a totally separate issue. But we need.
I mean, Mark, when people talk about the adults in the room, I mean, we have to actually explain what they really mean. They mean a continuation of Rishi Sunak's strategy, which has just been defeated by record numbers. And I'm sorry, Mark. We have to talk personalities here because they matter in politics. And if any Conservative is seriously telling me that Tom Tugendhat or Victoria Atkins is the answer to your problem, then just give up and go home now. They're not. And I think we also, Mark, have to look at this in a wider context. And I know some people will think that this is not a complementary comparison. And I'm not making it, by the way, in terms of specific policy details, right? But if you look at a figure like Marine Le Pen, she has broken through now in France. You look at that vote share. It is utterly critical for the right in the UK to have a real leader, a populist leader with charisma. Now, if you're looking at the potential lineup, it is only Suella, isn't it? I'm not expecting you to endorse anyone. I know you won't do that, but she seems to be the breakthrough. I mean, look, Robert Jenrick seems like a really good guy. He's made some moves in the right way, but he's not a charismatic star. And remember, this person is going to have to take on Nigel Farage or do a deal with Nigel Farage.
Dan, those are all extremely fair points, but I'm going to approach this somewhat more incrementally. The first thing the Conservative Party needs is a surgeon, a doctor, possibly even a necromancer to resuscitate the corpse. And doctors and surgeons and necromancers don't necessarily need oodles of charisma. I would agree with you, Dan, looking forward, that to get the centre-right back into government, we're going to need a charismatic leader. But the emergency now is to stem the bleeding, not to put the adults back in the room. When we put the adults back in the room, they burnt down the whole bloody house. That's actually happened. That's what the adults did when we put them back in the room. So the first thing, in my view, you're right, I think, but you're 2 steps ahead, Dan, looking at trying to win the next general election, which I do think is winnable because Labour's base, its majority is colossal but fragile. But immediate attention for the Conservative Party is to get back to Conservative principles. And you know what? You might have to do that a little bit boringly. It is actually going to be policy papers, clear proposals. By the way, an apology for the things that we let the electorate down on, not just the chickens coming home to roost on the Thursday election. But
I agree with
years,
that.
We haven't made Britain more conservative, have we?
No, and I do agree with that, but I think the problem is that this idea of having some sort of caretaker leader is not where politics is. I mean, this is life or death now for the Conservative Party. I think you have to go hard or go home. But look, I want to tell you about our question of the day, Mark, because we have the poll running within our YouTube community and we're asking who can save the Conservative Party. And there's 4 options. I'm not quite sure if you'll like the results. So Tom Tugendhat is on 3% of the vote. Boris Johnson only on 6% of the vote, which maybe suggests there's a move away from him. Suella Braverman on 24% of the vote, but with 67% of the vote, and you can still vote, and I'll keep you posted throughout the show, it's Nigel Farage, which suggests to me that actually your base probably wants Nigel and the Conservatives or some sort of deal.
Dan, I'll be honest about it straight up front. I think Nigel Farage should be a member of the Conservative Party. I am of the view that the Conservative Party is still the best vehicle for winning an election on the centre-right of British politics. I stand to be proven wrong. It's a statistical, numerical judgment. If I thought the Reform Party was in a better position to do that, I'd say so. But for all of the success of Nigel Farage and Reform, and I applaud it, his bravery and his success at the polls, and for all of the downside of the miserable Conservative result last Thursday, there are still only 5 Reform MPs and there are 121 Conservatives. I don't know how many councillors Reform has up and down the land. Mark Francois earlier was referencing, the infantry.
the grassroots. The Conservatives have thousands of councillors. I think Reform probably have half a dozen. The infrastructure is there for the Conservative Party. It just needs to be made conservative. But I would concede this. You've got to bring the Conservative family back together. I don't know exactly how that's achieved. I think it requires a good new Conservative leader. It probably down the line might well require an electoral pact or a merger. And I want to be in the same political party as Nigel Farage in 5 years' time.
And Mark, look, I just want to end on a note of support for Liz Truss, who is, of course, your close ally and someone who you run PopCon with. I was absolutely devastated, actually, by the fact that she lost her seat, because I think she had so much to offer this Conservative Party, actually. And I think, Mark, the thing that upsets me most is what we're now seeing from the MSM in regards to Liz Truss and from political opponents is now nothing short of bullying. It's also not based on fact. So there seems to be this mythology that has developed that the Labour Party and the Conservative wets and the MSM have agreed with, which is that Liz Truss crashed the economy. And they do not talk, Mark, about the fact that the economy was shut down for 2 years as a result of COVID lockdowns, which I believed were unnecessary, and a war in Ukraine. And I feel like the treatment of Liz Truss has actually been repulsive.
Dan, you're completely on the money. I mean, listen, I feel for her tremendously as a long-term friend. I mean, just think what she's gone through. Put aside your politics, whether they're on the right or the left. But I agree with what I've inferred from your question, Dan. She was not really the victim of her own downfall. That's not to say that she's never made a mistake in her life, but she tried to change things and came up against the blob and was dismissed by her own party, the supposedly Conservative Party, in her efforts to do that. She couldn't get tax cuts through half of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. She couldn't get a dampening down on welfare spending through half of the Conservative Parliamentary Party. The idea that she is responsible for the global rise in interest rates is lamentable. But Dan, here's the problem, and why I'm so delighted you've set up your new show and your new channel. The MSN always wants a victim like that. So convenient for them to blame everything on Liz Truss for as long as they can. Suits Keir Starmer, suits Ed Davey, suits Rishi Sunak, and suits the establishment.
Totally.
That lady has taken one for the team. But I know her well. She's robust. She can take the blows. Trust me, she'll be back.
She will. She absolutely will. She will be a force, as will PopCon. I absolutely love it. Thought it was a really brilliant event today. Mark Littlewood, thank you so much, and we'll speak very soon. Wow. Great news from Rich via our YouTube feed. Apparently, we have now reached 100,000 subscribers, and that is just after 3 days. My goodness. Thank you to every single one of you from the bottom of my heart. Please, if you're watching now, just hit subscribe on YouTube, because it means you'll find out about the show, which is at 5 o'clock UK time each weeknight. Loads of great comments coming in as well. Thomas Williams says Labour had no idea the government was short of money, the only people on the planet who did not know this. And on a similar note, London Snow says Rachel Reeves said, now that I've had a chance to see the books, is this her excuse for Labour to raise revenue not in the manifesto? The books are available for everyone to see online, and all the departments, they are published monthly and quarterly. Blue John, talking about Nigel Farage in Parliament today, says, I thought Nigel Farage might have eased his way in on his first day in Parliament, but no, straight in with both barrels against the ex-speaker John Bercow. Brilliant. I have to say, John, I thought it was brilliant too, although Mark Francois said it didn't match the mood of the day. Talboy says, Nigel, our Spartacus, millions of followers, our gladiator in Parliament now, taste of England again at last. And from 50 cents, Suella gave a great speech today, more positive words for reform. I believe she will defect, and with Nigel will win in 2029. But here's the twist. She says, with Suella as Prime Minister. Not sure if Nigel will be prepared to give that up so easily. Now, one of the tragedies of the election last week was that some true Conservatives and freedom fighters were caught up in the Tory wipeout. None more so than my friend, the former Education Minister, Dame Andrea Jenkins, who lost her new Leeds South West and Morley seat to Labour. But it was the Reform UK candidate that came in third after what was a dirty and bitter campaign. And I have to say, Andrea, I was absolutely gutted for you, because you are just the sort of MP that the Conservatives need in order to save the party. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine, to be honest, Dan. I've always been optimistic. I absorbed the shock. I honestly thought I was going to do it in the first 48 hours, and just planning my next move now. I think whatever's put in your path, you're meant to deal with it and with a smile on your face and get on with the next steps.
Absolutely. And at least, Andrea, you know this was not about you. It wasn't about what you were like as a local MP. I mean, in fact, you maintained a very strong local vote. But what was going on with Reform? Because I thought you were mates with the Reform UK party. I thought they wanted
So did
you.
I.
Yeah, I thought they wanted you, didn't they? But they seemed to quite... Well, what happened? It got very dirty and very messy and very bitter.
Absolutely. I can give you the behind the scenes story, Dan, because you're the right one to put this out there.
Please.
So, I mean, I did have meetings with Nigel Farage, with Rishi Sunak, with Richard Tice as well, trying to look at how we could unite the party. What I said in my speech at the election count actually was all true, that I saw this tsunami coming months ago. That's why on one of your shows, Dan, I actually spoke to you about my vote of no confidence I put in Rishi Sunak at the time. And you could just sense the mood of the country. That
yes, because Andrea, I should just interrupt and remind everyone that you were the first Conservative MP to break cover and formally call on Rishi Sunak to quit. You submitted your letter to the 1922 committee. I think it was shameful that only one other joined you, and that was Simon Clarke. If only they had heeded your warning, because many lost their seats as a result. But I just wanted to make that point. You go on, Andrea.
Thank you. And as you well know, Dan, colleagues fell out with me for speaking the truth where this was concerned. So I could see the tsunami coming. So I thought, how can we unite the centre right? So I looked into the Constitution and could we actually have Conservative and Reform candidates in these red wall seats? And those who are in blue wall, they could obviously stick as pure Conservatives. And then together we could have this united front of conservatism to stop a socialist government like we've got at the moment. Now, so I met with all, as I've already discussed, Reform wanted me to go over, but I'm one of these, I go down fighting with a ship, Dan. Much
Any
maybe
regrets?
to my detriment. No, not at all, because, as I said, I'm quite pragmatic. I'm not somebody who just deserts things when the going gets tough. To me, I'm a Conservative. Party leaders come and go. But so what happened then was, prior to the local elections, for several weeks, the Reform candidate who was standing against me in my seat kept trying to reach out to me, to my team, to one of my friends in the constituency, and saying he wants to meet with me. And my team messaged back, and then he kept blowing hot and cold. So we thought, we've got a bit of a mess here. And then he reached out to me about 10 days before the election on Facebook Messenger. And he said, we need to meet. And I thought, okay, we'll do it. I gave him my mobile number, and I was having a pizza with my 7-year-old Clifford, who you know, Dan.
Oh, lovely, yes.
On the Monday evening with my sister as well. And what happened was I got a phone call and text message off him saying, where are you? Can I meet? I said, well, come to the shopping centre where we're having pizza. And he was really damning to the party, Dan, to the Reform Party. He was effing and blinding, calling them a SHIT show. I should never have stood against you. I was originally going to stand against Hilary Benn, who's the biggest Remainer in Parliament, because that's the constituency he lives. But then I got told to come across to you to try and put pressure on to push you to defect. and he thought he was going to go back to the old seat. But I personally think Richard Tice was vindictive in the end, and he thought, stick him up there anyway, because I didn't. I was having conversations even 2 days before, and then it got really dirty.
So what, they were angry because you didn't defect to Reform?
Yes, I think that. Yes, I don't think Nigel was. I don't think Nigel knew that a lot of this was going on. I mean, I had conversation with Nigel. I've got a lot of respect for Nigel. Trying to unite both parties.
And you used a picture of Nigel quite famously on your election brochure rather than Rishi Sunak.
Yes, and I couldn't be a hypocrite by putting Rishi on. I mean, I told him to resign. How the heck could I put him on? And that was my message out there, that the centre right needs to unite, Dan. I thought, let's do this early. Let's put out a statement. So that's my reason. I knew it would cause a bit of a fuss. And the party was actually okay about it, the Conservative Party, remarkably. They probably thought they had more troubles brewing than this. But then, after my meeting with a Reform candidate, within 24 hours, he put in a Morley Facebook group how I approached him, even though he approached me first. I've got all the messages, and I tried to get him to defect. And then the next minute, we've got Richard Tice putting tweets out there saying I tried to bribe him, which was a load of rubbish. It was actually one of their businessmen who offered me an 80 grand job to defect, as they did with Lee Anderson, remember? He got offered 80 grand, as another MP did as well. And
okay,
so turned it around, which I'm fuming at.
So just to clarify, what you're saying, a business person with connections to Reform UK offered you a salaried job, whether you won at the election or not, as long as you defected to Reform?
I could have had the salaried job immediately. That's what he said to me. We met in 5 Hertford Street, which you know very well, Dan, in London, and which I didn't take the offer, obviously, and I stuck with the Conservatives. And
is there anything against the rules about an offer like that, or is it allowed?
I honestly don't know, to be honest. I don't think it's allowed. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been done behind closed doors, would it?
Yeah.
But regardless of that, it left a really bad taste in my mouth, the way Tice took to social media. His girlfriend took to social media on election day of me with a picture of my yellow dress sticking my finger up at all the lefty mob. And so it got quite dirty. And so I was, and
by the way, I think you should be proud of that moment, Andrea. It's one of my favourite moments of yours, when those idiotic lefty protesters were yelling out obscenities to you, and you just thought, and you stuck your finger up. I loved it.
And you were the only one who I'd let interview me on this, if you remember, Dan.
Yes, I do. I do remember that. It was the first time we met, actually, after that. But look, I think another really important thing that I just want to get a bit more detail on, because I think this will matter for the history books, if I'm honest, Andrea. So you're saying that you offered Rishi Sunak directly the opportunity to form some form of alliance with Reform UK, and I believe he did meet you to discuss this.
I had several phone conversations. I met his PPS. I was working with Andy Wigmore, one of the 4 bad boys of Brexit, a good friend of mine. He spoke to Rishi's PPS as well, who then turned out to get involved in the gambling stuff, if you recall, over the election.
Was that Craig Williams? Is that who that was?
Yes, absolutely. And I met with him personally. I even did a big sort of presentation, not a PowerPoint, on what I think we need to do to save conservatism, and how we need to sort of bring Nigel into this, how we need a major cabinet reshuffle to with some red meat in there, have the likes of Pretty as Deputy Prime Minister instead of that useless Dowden who doesn't connect with people. What did he do? I even got the part of the Constitution, because I got a constitutional expert to look at this. What would we need to do in the party to do this? And even gave Rishi the paragraph that we would need to edit. I mean, it was all possible. But I don't just blame Rishi, I blame Reform as well. I think political egos, I think his advisor advised him against. That's my hunch. And I mean, I did get a call off Rishi when he after the election. I got one on Sunday apologising. I think every MP did who lost their seat.
What? Oh, what did he say to you?
Well, I won't go into much detail, Dan. It's not fair, but I did bring up about our meeting and why the hell did he call an election? How ridiculous was that? We should have lowered taxes in the autumn statement. We should have done this major cabinet reshuffle, made friends with reform, then go into an election. We went so unprepared. It was just crazy. As you see, it was political suicide.
Did he admit that he was wrong?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And he shouldered the blame himself in the conversation.
And did he admit that he was wrong in regards to Reform UK or just in terms of the election day?
In general. Just in general.
So you think there was a deal to be done where in red wall seats, the Conservatives and Reform UK would have teamed up and run one candidate under some sort of united ticket.
Yes.
You proposed that to Rishi Sunak, even made a presentation with him, supported by Andy Wigmore.
And I proposed
and he turned it down.
Well, I didn't get a chance because I also met with Richard Tice and told him my idea in a Greasy Spoon cafe in Lambeth. I met with Nigel over lunch, and so I did pitch it to everybody because I could see what was coming down the line, Dan. I did fear this Labour supermajority, what we've got, and all the woke-a-rama that we're going to get as well.
Yes, woke-a-rama, I love that.
And I do think, unfortunately, that the party now, I'm not sure they've learnt the lessons. I don't know what you think. I mean, looking at the cabinet reshuffle.
No, it's awful.
It's awful. They should have put Pretty in there. They should have put Suella. They should have put
Andrew Mitchell promoted. I mean, honestly, look, I said earlier in the show, if anyone thinks Victoria Atkins and Tom Tugendhat is the answer, then the Conservative Party might as well pack up and go home. No chance now of you defecting to Reform?
Look, I mean, to me, I want to. I mean, I'm not a defector type person, but I want to actually see who the MPs vote for. I think that if we get one of those that you've suggested, Tom or Victoria, then I think, unfortunately, the party's going to go further and further behind in the polls because they just don't get it. And that is sad. I'd much rather see Pretty or Suella get it because I think we've got a fighting chance. And whereby, your previous guest, who I'm a great fan of, said we've got to do things a bit more gently. I think we need to blow the door off there, show that we're here again.
I am loving Suella's narrative.
Conservatism is here. And
I love that. I love that narrative. But I think the choice is between Suella, if they want to go strong, which is unlikely, but maybe Pretty is more the consensus candidate. Final question, Andrea. What about this talk of a new party? There's obviously Dominic Cummings, who's talking about funding a start-up party, and then also Marcus Fish has resigned from the Conservative Party. He was a Brexiteer who says there has to be an entirely new vehicle. He doesn't want it to be Reform UK. He wants there to be almost like a new Conservative Party.
I think that'll all depend, really, won't it? If we go to the centre right as the Conservatives. If we don't, then we've got to put all options on the table, Dan, because this is actually about ensuring that we knock this socialist nightmare government. I mean, people will wake up with a morning after feel after a year of the Labour government, and so we need to be ready. The centre right needs to unite and be ready.
It's an emergency time, but look, one thing that I am absolutely convinced of is that you are going to be a big voice in conservatism and populist politics in the UK, because honestly, you were right. Simon Clarke was right. The party should have listened to you. They chose to ignore you, but history will show that you warned the MPs. And as a result, I think you will be a big part of the rebuild, whether it's of the Conservative Party or a new movement of the right. I guess that is the question. So Dame Andrea Jenkins, lovely to have you, former Tory Education Minister. Now, June Slater is coming up, and we're going to show you that incredible moment where Novak Djokovic was booed at Wimbledon, which, by the way, I'm a fan of Novak, and I thought it was really terrible. But what I loved was his reaction. So I cannot wait to hear what the brilliant June Slater has to say about that. I know so many of you are looking forward to seeing June. So she's here in just one moment. But what's so important for me, by the way, about being independent is that I'm only going to tell you about products that I actually use and that I believe will change your life as well as mine. So today, I want to let you know about Verso. I've entered my 40s, I want to stay healthy, and I've really decided to become as fit and sharp as possible. Now, I'm not perfect at this. I'm exercising every day. I'm trying to diet. I'm doing the 16-8 fast. But what's really interesting is that if you look into this scientifically, if you listen to very, very good scientists, by the way, like David Sinclair, they have proven that you can now reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I wanted a product that would enhance everything I was already doing, but also had evidence behind it. So I started using Cell Being by Verso. It has scientifically proven ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. That's the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now, right at the start of my day, and it has genuinely been transformative. I've found fasting easier, I've lost fat, I'm actually eating less too, believe it or not. But the team at Verso tell me that's due to reducing blood sugar, which can lead to fewer cravings. So basically, this product has taken years off me within months, and you can experience the same thing. Now, this is all scientifically backed up. Verso actually publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee you are getting what you pay for. And I'm super excited to say that to mark the launch of Verso, there is an incredible offer for you. 15% off. Oh yes, you just need to head to buy.ver.so/outspoken and use outspoken as the coupon code. Now that link, I'm going to put it in our YouTube and Rumble description, but to repeat, and I'll spell it out for you, buy.ver.so/outspoken. Now back to the show, and it's time for The Outsider with June Slater. June Slater, you absolute legend. I'm so sorry that we had some issues yesterday and we kept you waiting, but 24 hours later, and believe me, by popular demand, you are back. And June, what I find so fascinating is that you actually think, despite this socialist government coming in, there's reason for us to hope in the form of a certain Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Is that right?
Well, not just because of reform, but because of the public, because I think we've shown immense resolve over this last few years, and we've stood up to tyrannical ruling and really stuff that's unsuitable that we should never have had thrust upon us. I'm sad to see someone like Andrea Jenkins lose a seat because it was nothing to do with the quality of her being an MP. She was a great MP. I've got quite a few people who follow me from Morley and around there, and they're gutted that she's gone. I don't see it as Reform's presence the reason. I think people are angry. But the reason I think we've a lot to be thankful for is before this, people are afraid of the Labour government. It's going to be horrible. Let's be honest, yes. This is Starmageddon. This is woke ideology. This is heavy taxing. This is net zero. This is everything you don't want. But this is on the back of a Conservative government who shut the country down. Now, whichever way you look at it, Sweden didn't shut down. And the very fact we closed the economy has snowballed into so many other problems, not least of all health problems and issues that we all have because they dishonestly pumped a drug out. And when I say pumped, I mean promoted, that they knew little about, and they did what politicians are synonymous with, which is, yes, get this done, do one for the team. They made us feel guilty if we didn't, and they should never have gone into that field.
Yeah, and what's so amazing about Nigel, and I don't think enough people give him credit for this, but remember, I was talking to him throughout 2020, and he was totally against all of the authoritarian overreach, certainly in terms of lockdowns. And I just wanted to show you, June, a moment today where Nigel went to Clacton and started meeting the people of Clacton, because I found it so fascinating. I just loved watching it, actually. I hope you do too, because it shows, June, how I think he has a different relationship with the public to virtually any other politician in the world. I'd probably put two exceptions in there, Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. But have a look at what happened in Clacton today.
Really good. Good to see you.
Not all of it, you know. Wow, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Lovely loads there. Thank you. Thanks,
guys. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Cheers. Nice to meet you. Brilliant.
We voted for you.
Of course you did. I tell you what, if 16-year-olds have to vote, I do pretty well, I reckon.
One on this one.
Hello, you're right. Thank you very
So pleased to have you in the area.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll do my best.
I'm sure you will. We're looking forward to all that.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. How you doing? All right? Yeah.
Well done. Thanks for taking on Clacton.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello. Yeah, good to come in. How you doing?
Oh, wrong way. Nice one.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you? All right?
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, June, I presume that's the sort of positivity you're talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. Look at Nigel Farage's face. He believes everything I believe. He's my kind of politician. And what I like about Nigel, because I can mimic people because I watch mannerisms and I pick up on things. And what I pick up from Nigel is, doesn't matter what's going on. He isn't leaving the country. He isn't saying we're doomed. He's got a smile on his face and he's trying to do something about it. And I went on my own YouTube channel this morning and did a video for everyone to say, actually, what we should be doing this week, even though the Labour government coming in is of no consequence initially, there's going to be laws and legislation changes, but we've got some people in there to fight that will fight this. You see, what we haven't had up till now, we haven't had an opposition. We've now got an opposition because the Tories that are there will fight the Labour government, and Nigel Farage and his men will fight the Labour government. And this is a move now. This is just the beginning of something really, really positive in politics. You can't sort this country out just through the political arena, but you can certainly start to heal a few wounds. And what I take away from this is this doom and gloom and the Labour Party's in. Someone sent me a link. June, look at this. People with multiple wives can claim benefit. What are we going to survive through this? And I said, hang on, look at the date. This is 2016. The Tories did this. The Tories have not been conservative and now they're paying the price. And they've lost good people like Andrea Jenkins. I was surprised when she didn't win a seat. And she's been one of the most outspoken. She's been what a Tory should be. And what the Tories can't seem to accept is they are flatlining right now if they don't change their attitude. And the people that you've mentioned that they're putting forward, then they seem to be happy on death row because they're not going to win anybody back over. All that's going to happen is reform will gather momentum because Nigel will bring with him publicity. The mainstream media will have to report on him because he's one of the most interested men in politics. The other drips that we've got there, I mean, so many lacklustre individuals. I look and I think, oh no, is this really our government?
June, lots of people have been messaging asking if you would ever run for Reform UK.
I wouldn't stand as an MP simply because I'm too old. And
Don't
then
be
I would
ridiculous, June.
I'm too old. And
As
it
if.
would upset the lifestyle that I've chosen.
Yes.
But I
No,
think
that's
I'm
a good
more
reason.
valuable.
That's a good reason. Not because you're old,
valuable.
but because you live a great life.
I'm more valuable just speaking out because I have quite a lot of contacts and I see things quite quickly that I can share where members of the public don't get to know the information. So I think I'm more valuable being able to say, look, like today, I've had people really depressed, but it's nothing to be depressed about. This is the first time we've had a fight. There's supposed to be the government and the opposition. And all we've had is one team heading for the same goalmouth. Now what we've got a home team, somebody that's going to make the Tories do more fighting. We've already got some Tories who want to fight, like Suella Braverman, and we've got Nigel and his men. So I think moving forward, we're going to go from strength to strength. So I'm not bothered about Keir Starmer and what goes on and whether David Lammy is growing a cervix between his eyebrows because he thinks that's where they come from. I just think most people out there, most normal people out there, are picking the kids up from school. They're not interested in what David Lammy thinks about whether men can have penises and women can't, and whatever's going on in the world. They are not the slightest bit interested. That is something the media pick up on to cause sensationalism, when most people want to get up in the morning, feed the families, pay the mortgage, have some spare cash, go on the holidays, day trips at the weekend. They want to live their life. And we are continuing to do that. That's the fight back. The fight back. Not everybody joined in and got a booster. The fight back. The electric vehicle industry is tanking support. The fight back. People are using cash more. We have so many positives that are just stacking up. And now with reform and Nigel's positivity in the House of Commons, it's all right ignoring Andrew Bridgen. They won't be able to ignore Nigel Farage because the people won't let them.
No, it's the start of a revolution. And if you look at what's happened with Marine Le Pen in France, there's a very similar trajectory. She's just a little bit ahead of Nigel. Now, look, we've got loads more to talk about in terms of Reform UK, including the fact, this is really disturbing, June. Teachers are now starting to be told to attack Reform UK in class. We're going to reveal a lot about that. But before we get to the after show, though, June, I had to ask you about this moment where Novak Djokovic was booed at Wimbledon. And what was so fascinating is that he took on the crowd head on. And it was actually a really compelling moment of television. So, June, I'll get you to react off the back of this, but have a look at what happened, what went down when Novak Djokovic and the audience got into a bit of a tussle.
And to all those people that have chosen to disrespect the player, in this case me, have a good night. Good night, good night. Very good night. Yeah. I'm hoping that they were just commenting on Runa and that they weren't disrespecting you. They were. I don't accept it. No. I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to also boo. Listen. I've been on the tour for more than 20 years, so trust me. I know all the tricks. I know how it works. It's fine. It's okay. I focus on the respectful people that have respect, that paid the ticket to come and watch tonight, and love tennis, and appreciate the players and the effort that the players put in here. I played in much more hostile environment, trust me. You guys can't touch me.
Novak Djokovic won, the Wimbledon posh crowd 0. I mean, that was an incredible response, wasn't it, June?
Well, he handled it just right as usual. This guy's invincible. He's a warrior class sportsman. He did what he did through the lockdowns and he got on with it. And he's the height of fitness. He's an excellent sportsman. He's good at his job. He's good at PR. And I'm not so sure that was a genuine boo. I think there were some paid boos there. I don't trust a crowd like that at Wimbledon. The British crowd don't normally show themselves up like that, and they did show themselves up. It's a sporting event, and it should be kept to sport. And I do think that, I'm sorry, but it's Djokovic is the winner. The crowd lost.
Yeah, I thought that was incredible, and I have so much respect for that guy. And actually, a lot more respect having watched that. But June, look, stand by. We've got lots to talk about. The new women's minister is now saying that they are a they on the internet. That's totally bizarre. Connor Tomlinson and Carl Benjamin have been booted out of the Conservative Party, and Reform UK are going to war with the media over claims that they stood fake candidates in some seats. All of that is coming up in our Outspoken after show with June, so don't go anywhere. Stand by. If you haven't heard about the after show, let me tell you about it. Very important to me. We have a safe space that isn't patrolled by big tech, where censorship and control runs really deep. So we've set up www.outspoken.live. It's the membership section of our website where you will get a half hour of extra content every day. So very shortly, we're going to come off YouTube and Rumble and move to our own platform. I'd absolutely love you to stay with us. It means every day you get this unpatrolled content. And it also means that you are able to help me start this independent media venture, which I believe is very much needed in the UK. I want it to feel like this is our channel, funded by all of us for the benefit of all of us. So head right now to www.outspoken.live and you can sign up to get all of that Outspoken content. And by the way, if you are watching on YouTube, thank you so much. We have just hit 100,000 subscribers today, which is incredible in such a short space of time. If you haven't hit subscribe, please do, and turn on your notifications so that you're alerted to every episode. Remember, the mainstream media in this country is broken, it's corrupt, it's an enemy of the people. You cannot trust them. It is time for the independent media in the UK to rise in the same way as it has across the Atlantic. So I'm going to vow to be honest with you every single step of the way. We are live each weekday at 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Tomorrow, Howard Cox, David Campbell Bannerman, and Angela Levin return. Then Thursday, this is going to be good, Calvin Robinson and Lady Colin Campbell. Friday, I'm joined by Samantha Markle too. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. The after show starts right now at www.outspoken.live. See you there.